Welcome to Bloodbath and Beyond. I'm Jay, and today I'm going to be talking about 10 disturbing movies that you can watch free on Tubi. The qualifications for this list: it has to be available for free on Tubi, obviously, and it has to be disturbing. It has to make you feel weird or gross, or it's just really twisted that might make you sick. I'm not going to be talking about extreme movies per se, but I will make another list for those. And again, this is only what's on Tubi. It's in no particular order, and we're going to start this with a banger: The Girl Next Door. This movie is based on the Jack Ketchum novel of the same name, which is about the real-life murder of Sylvia Likens. This is a young girl who's sent to live with her Aunt Ruth, and her Aunt Ruth ties her up in the basement and lets her children and the local kids torture her. It's a completely heartbreaking movie. If you haven't seen this, brace yourself. And if you want something that's a little bit lighter, but still talking about Sylvia Likens, there's also the film An American Crime, which isn't as graphic as The Girl Next Door is. Staying in the same vein, we've got Eden Lake. This movie's about a couple that's going on vacation and they're harassed by these local kids. Things go a little too far. The man accidentally kills the kid's dog, and then they hunt them down and torture them. I won't give too much away, but it is one of the more graphic movies on this list, and if you didn't hate punk teens already, you absolutely will after this. Next, we've got one of my all-time favorites, Audition. This is a movie that you see on a lot of extreme and disturbing lists, and rightfully so, to some degree. It's not an extreme movie, but it is very weird and creepy, and as you start to learn more and more about what's happening, it gets creepier. Takashi Miike is known for doing this kind of stuff, and this is brilliantly executed. It's about a lonely businessman trying to find a woman. He sets up a fake audition to try and narrow down the proper woman for him, and well, she's kinda nuts, and that's all I'll say. Next, we've got Be My Cat. Almost all of these movies, I've done videos on Extreme Underground, my other channel, so if you like full movie breakdowns where I basically go through every scene and talk about them, definitely check out that other channel. This was one that I recently did. Be My Cat is about a guy who's obsessed with Anne Hathaway, and he wants to make a movie to prove to Anne Hathaway that she should be in his film. So it's a found footage movie of this guy making basically a snuff tape to send to Anne Hathaway to convince her to be in his movie. It's as weird as it sounds, and what makes it even creepier is the fact that some of the situations, the director, who is also the actor, is talking with the actresses, and you can't really tell like what was rehearsed. Like, it doesn't seem like there was a proper script for this movie, so that's what makes it creepy. You can't tell if the women are actually frightened for being in this movie.
You don't want to find a solution.
If you don't leave me, I call the police.
The only thing I will say, there's not a huge climax to it, so if you go in expecting something crazy and over the top towards the end, that doesn't really happen. It's all about how weird and uncomfortable this might make you. Next, we've got I Spit on Your Grave, the remake, as well as the sequel to the remake. I'm sure I don't really need to describe what happens in these films, but they're revenge movies and have some amazing practical effects. Jennifer Hills is just a badass who's just murdering the people that sexually assaulted her. And in the sequel, it's a woman named Katie in a similar situation. In these, it's all about the satisfying kills, but they're still disturbing in their own right, not just from the graphic content that you see because of the assault that happens.
It's okay. I'm going to take good care of you.
This one I wasn't sure if I was going to put on the list, but I decided to. It's called Dis. Dis is a strange movie that stars Bill Oberst Jr. in the lead role. He's an ex-soldier who seems to be haunted by his past to some degree, and he is taken captive by a demonic figure that seeks the seeds of killers. It's got some really gross and disturbing scenes visually. It's a pretty short movie, it's only an hour, and it's pretty enjoyable. It's definitely different, there's not a lot of talking in it, and if you were on like mushrooms, you might freak out a little. I just think it is one of those movies that has some imagery that will get under people's skin. That's about what I can say. Next was a pretty big surprise, which is The Corpse of Anna Fritz. This is a movie that's best watched without knowing anything, so I'm going to be very vague here. Basically, the body of a famous actress is brought into a morgue, and there's 3 guys there that want to see her naked. This obviously gets weirder than I'm going to talk about, but there are some pretty interesting moments. There's a big reveal that you're gonna be like, oh my god, what the fuck. So I would highly recommend this. I think it's a Spanish movie, so there are subtitles, so just a heads up. Next, we've got a movie that I only recently watched for my first time ever after it being recommended so many times. So I'm gonna have a video of that coming to Extreme Underground shortly. It's In a Glass Cage. This is about Klaus, who is an ex-Nazi child killer who is unsuccessful in his attempt to kill himself. So now he lives inside an iron lung, or the glass cage as the title suggests. He's paralyzed, so he can only look around and he can't move. Unfortunately, a young man from his past comes to see him and almost wants to be like him. And I won't get too much into how the story unfolds, but it's an interesting watch. It's not my favorite, that's for sure, because it is much slower than I thought it would be, considering how many times it's been recommended, but it is extremely well done. But if you haven't seen it, it is worth watching just so you know about it, because I do see this referenced a lot. Another movie that's referenced a lot that you probably should watch is SCHRAMM. This is by Jörg Bucharest, who also did like Necromantic 1 and 2, as well as Der Todesking. It's about Lothar. He's a paranoid taxi driver who lives next to a prostitute. They become friendly, and it's just a weird watch. It's not overly gory, but there are some moments that'll make you flinch, especially if you're a dude, because he pulls out some nails and decides to hammer his dick to the table. But there are different things. Again, this one is really short. It's just over an hour. It's worth checking out because there are some really cool camera moves, and the story is just interesting because it's just this man that's just having like a downward spiral and he's tripping out. So check it out. And last but not least, we have Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. This one's the classic that stars Michael Rooker. He plays Henry and he goes to live with his friend Otis after he gets out of jail, and Becky, Otis's sister, comes to live with them. Eventually, Henry starts to show Otis how to be a serial killer, and this movie is just about getting into the mind and the psyche of somebody who actually believes that this is the right thing to do, and how somebody else can maybe slowly turn into a serial killer on a whim. It's a pretty interesting ride. The ending is fantastic, and I would highly recommend it.
Did you really kill your mama?
I guess I did.
So that was my list. What'd you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Again, all of these can be found on the US version of Tubi at the time of recording. And again, if you want to see full breakdowns of basically every movie on this list, go to my other channel, The Extreme Underground, and enjoy some disgusting shit. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything Bloodbath and beyond.